Top 8.
We saw BBD earlier in the day. That was actually in round 4. He's on the bug control deck, and there he is on the right side of the screen. And Bill Senneway, Esper Stoneblade. So we've seen this a lot today.
Yeah, Esper
these
Stoneblade,
two decks.
Yeah, certainly has been doing pretty well today. Also, though, the bug deck, we saw it a lot earlier with Ali Antrazi playing it, and we saw BBD playing it once earlier. We've seen some good success in bug decks with Deathrite Shaman today. Jarvis, you already in top 8 with the Deathrite Team America build.
And Bill Senneway's Esper Stoneblade looks like a fairly standard build here. No big surprises. He's got, a Singleton Vindicate. He's got 2 Engineered Explosives. So, these decks mess around a little bit with their answers, but their threats are pretty consistent. Stoneforge Mystic, Snapcaster Mage, Vendilion Click, and of course, Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Right. So 2 Jace the Mind Sculptors in Bill's deck, 4 in Brian's deck. This is the kind of deck, the kind of matchup, I think, where bug control really gets favored. Both these decks kind of on the same reactive game plan, but Brian even more reactive with a more powerful late game.
Okay, so starting things off, Bill with an Underground Sea and Thoughtseize, and we're going to get to see Braun-Duin's game plan. I don't know about the bug control being favored here. We've seen Esper Stoneblade. It can come out very quickly if a Stoneforge Mystic goes unanswered and gets active with a Batterskull. Thoughtseize is going to pave the way for that.
Yeah, I mean, both decks have a lot of the same tools that they're working with, and both decks are very powerful. It's not to say that it's a really favored matchup one way or the other. Bill Senneway has to be more aggressive than he would typically like to be with an Esper Stoneblade deck. So I think what's more interesting is that the Stoneblade deck is forced into a role it does not naturally come into.
So Liliana of the Veil is the card that Bill chooses. And that's one that certainly can mess with an early aggression plan.
Verdant Catacombs from Brian. Brian has just the only spells in his hand with Jason Brainstorm. He's just going to kind of be developing for a while. But Bill with, I would say, anything but an aggressive hand. It looks like it's lands, Jace, Batterskull. And Brian actually having drawn Deathrite Shaman right on this turn. Can kind of steal the play from Bill here. The Birds of Paradise half of the Deathrite Shaman be pretty powerful.
So Bill, by taking the Liliana of the Veil with Thoughtseize, was not so much clearing the way for aggression, but was clearing the way for a long game. He didn't want his hand to get torn apart by Liliana.
Yeah, I think he took it for the simple reason that he didn't have an answer to it.
Braun-Duin cracks the Verdant Catacombs and fetches an Underground Sea. Gonna go for the Deathrite Shaman that you say just drew. There it is.
Yep. So actually, sorry, I should stand corrected up for a second on the math here. Braun-Duin, by the way, records of the players. Braun-Duin is currently at 7-1. Bill Senneway is at 6-1-1. There's a chance if Bill wins that he can miss on top 8. He is neck and neck in breakers with another player. Brian with a win will lock his spot.
Okay, Brian wastelands the Underground Sea, and Bill's gonna play Marsh Flats.
And you see a pair of Deathrite Shamans for Brian.
Ooh,
because
wow.
of the number of lands in the graveyard right now, this represents a massive mana advantage for Brian. You have a possibility of Snapcaster Thoughtseize for Bill. Bill only has Snapcaster, Jace, and Batterskull, so Brian's going to get to basically Jace first here. And yeah, gets rid of the Thoughtseize. That can't be Snapcastered either. Bill drops to 16.
So yeah, even though Brian only has 2 lands, he could land his Jace here using the Deathrite Shamans for mana.
Right, and have it be, the question is he probably has to worry about is Force of Will, but he doesn't really have great ways to power through Force of Will unless he wants to draw a Force of his own.
He's thinking about it.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, he has to know if that Jace resolves, this is huge. The first the first Jace, and even when they Legend roll, the first Jace is just so much better than the second one.
Yeah, just getting a Brainstorm out of it.
So
Okay, he taps it. What is he? Most likely using it for mana.
Yeah. Is he attacking, possibly? That would be strange.
Is that what just happened?
I think he's attacking with the Deathrite Shaman. It's going to trade with a Snapcaster Mage. Yeah, there's no other reason Bill would put a Snapcaster Mage into play other than that. And
wow.
Yeah, I don't think that's really how Brian wanted that situation to end. The Snapcaster, especially with Deathrites in play, the Snapcaster is not a very good card. Brian, by doing that, lets a trade happen that really isn't one he's
now he has to go
in.
for Jace.
Yeah.
He's gotten another blue card out of Bill's hand, so can't really be afraid of the Force of Will, can you? You gotta go for it.
Yeah, Jace still, I mean, it still will get countered by Force of Will as it would have before, but Jace the Mind Sculptor, and it will resolve. Jace on an empty board, one of the strongest plays you can get in Legacy, and Bill brainstorms into a pair of Snapcaster Mages and another land.
Now Bill, if he can draw, yeah, he's got 4 lands, so he's gonna go for his own Jace.
Yep, second Jace, not as sweet as the first one, but fortunately, this way Bill still has game right now, as opposed to, you know, Brian will only get 1 activation of the Jace.
Yeah, you have to. You can't just let Brian continue to brainstorm.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, but he also doesn't have any threats with which he can attack Jace, so this trade has to happen.
Yep, so Legend Roll happens. Bill Senneway hand mostly out of action, save he has a Batter Skull. He's really going to have to get a lot of work done by Batter Skull. Remember, Brian with the onboard Deathrite Shaman and 2 Snapcaster Mages. Interestingly enough, nothing in his graveyard yet to Snapcaster, but still with a very good presence. So we have and the fetch land, and then into Brainstorm for Brian. Draws a land, another land, and the third card, unknown. And then the Inquisition found by Brian Braun-Duin. That shouldn't find anything in Bill Senneway's hand.
It's a miss.
Alright, so
Bill untaps, and he's going to slam down that Batter Skull.
Yeah, finding Stoneforge Mystic. It's kind of this interesting thing where it's you know, Brian, the bad news is that he missed. The good news is that Bill Senneway's hand's not very good right now. Brian will have to answer Batter Skull, but that's about all, you know, as far as you can tell, that's not too impossible. If you look at Brian's hand, the cards he has to answer it, he actually, and it's not that he can Force of Will it, so if he eventually draws a Force of Will and makes Bill bounce the Batter Skull, then he can force it on the way back down. Brian can counter it, and otherwise has to just kind of continue to deal with it.
Okay, Bill goes for Stoneforge Mystic and gets a GT, so he's doubling up on his equipment threats.
Right. The best thing that Brian can do here is continue to answer all of Bill's creatures, which is what he's going to try. You know, Bill's deck is pretty short on creatures. It has just 10 in the main, 4 Snapcaster, 4 Stoneforge, 2 Vendilion Click. Batter Skull does give the opportunity to rebuy Germ tokens, but once again, that also opens up the Batter Skull to being countered.
And it's going to take some time.
Yeah, the hard thing is that Bill's gonna. I feel that Bill's gonna have trouble actually putting any sort of clock on Brian. The 4 damage off Batter Skull can be fairly easily negated with Deathrite Shaman life gains and activations. An end-step Snapcaster just as a Snapcaster Brainstorm, and then Deathrite Shaman Brainstorming by Brian.
Alright, using the mana ability there to its fullest.
Yeah, 2 lands and a Brainstorm, so Brian once again going to be able to continue to develop his mana base and shuffle away extra lands.
Verdant Catacombs. Counting up his mana. What is he going to do here? Did he get an Abrupt Decay? Yeah, there it is. Abrupt Decay on Stoneforge before it can become active.
And
activate Factory. Swing.
A pair of attacks puts Bill down to 11. Once again, though, Brian doesn't have the counterspell for Batterskull yet, so it seems unlikely that he'll be able to get Bill to 0 just with this aggro plan.
Right, Bill almost forced to play Batterskull here, and there it is. Give me my germ token, he says. And Brian cracks a fetch land. His Verdant Catacombs. So now Brian has to put the brakes on. You're gonna need to use Deathrite Shaman a little more to pick away at Bill's life total. But really needs to find an answer to this Batterskull. Because that 4/4 Vigilant Lifelink is going to potentially put things out of reach.
So right, that's really the only weapon that Bill has right now. It certainly stops the attack of Brian, but is only so at being able to actually raise Brian's life total.
Brian activated Deathrite Shaman at the end of turn, removing his own Inquisition, making Bill lose 2 more life. Ooh, wow,
Yeah,
that's perfect.
Yep. Just because it'll by 2 turns. And Bill will be able to get another creature for 2 turns. Yeah.
Bill does not have enough time here to be returning Batterskull.
Right, drops to 4.
He needs to find a different answer because he goes down to 4. He actually needs to answer the Deathrite Shaman here.
Alright. And yeah, Bill, remember, Deathrite Shaman just on its own is able to deal 4 damage over the course of 2 turns. So Bill has a lot. He has drawn Supreme Verdict, which we'll see in play right now. So that'll get both of Brian's creatures, not the Factory, unfortunately.
So the man land might finish it here.
Now Bill's going to need a Swords to Plowshares, and Brian, to be safe, also Liliana will be able to use Liliana to start taking cards from Bill's hand. Bill has 2, so if there's a possible Swords, he can, he can first try to get it. He can protect it, but the problem is Brian's drawn a Force of Will as well.
Brian brainstorms. We saw Force of Will and a Snapcaster Mage, so those 2 are certainly 2 he's going to keep, so that he has counter magic up. Activate Mishra's Factory. Swing, take you to 2. Oh, Bill had the Swords, but Brian has drawn the Force of Will.
And I don't know if he has a blue card with it, so this might actually work. He appears to. It looks like he also just has a Snapcaster Mage. So he can use the Snapcaster Mage to just once again be an ambush viper, if you will. And yep, Brian goes to 19.
So he lets the Swords to Plowshares resolve.
Brian chooses not to plus the Liliana.
He likes the 3 cards in his hand. One of the rare instances where you will see a Planeswalker not be activated. There it is, Ambush Tiago.
Yep. Bill with an opportunity to Swords that as well.
Bill has drawn really well here. The back-to-back Swords to Plowshare is exactly what he needed, along with that Supreme Verdict.
Right. So Brian now, with no threats at this point. The problem is Bill has cleared the way to make room for himself to be able to bounce and recast Batterskull.
Right. So that's going to keep trading with loyalty counters on Liliana of the Veil.
Now, the question is, if Braun-Duin does not have a 5th land, he won't. This is his opportunity to get the Batterskull, to just hardcast Force of Will on the recast. But because of that Swords, it doesn't appear that he has a way to.
So he's going to play a Snapcaster main phase for Brainstorm.
And he's hoping to find a blue card. If he gets a blue card, which he does not, he would be able to force the Batterskull on its way back down. As a result, what I think he's going to have to do is plus the Liliana so that he can Edict the Batterskull Germ again.
Yep.
As long as he keeps a Mishra's Factory and the Forcible in hand, he'll be able to answer the Batterskull when it comes back down.
And, oh wow, another Mishra's Factory. So
No,
wait
that
a minute,
actually
that's
is summoning sick. Yeah, you can't do that. And the judge is catching that one right away.
So Liliana, +1 as you said.
Yep. And goes and
Brian discards a land. Bill discards Jite.
and step 4 Batterskull here. Remember, Brian will not be able to counter the Batterskull on his way back down. He'll have to lose the Liliana to Edict the Batterskull. Then when it's bounced, hard cast a Force of Will at it on the way down again. Well, he can just swing for 4.
Yeah, he's got the lethal here.
Yeah, it's on board. Bill doesn't have an answer to the board right now.
So he just does it hoping that Brian will make a mistake.
Right.
Edict, activate factory, and attack. And that's going to do it.
Should be good. Bill Senneway 0. Brian Braun-Duin wins game 1.
Well, that got really close. We thought Brian had a very big advantage
Yeah, I think
in the early to mid.
I'm not a huge fan of I think he chose kind of a roundabout line at the end there. He gave Bill a little more hope than he probably had to, but he was far enough ahead, and he did still have a coherent game plan so that he was able to reel it in at the end.
And also missed, on the brainstorm if he had drawn a blue card for that Force of Will.
Right. So
would have just put the nail in. But Bill, I think that was 3 good rips in a row. Supreme Verdict, two swords.
Great.
Keeping him in the game.
Great draws. None of them that really pull him. Yeah, they're actually just good draws in general. So, I would say Bill still did what he has trouble with is competing with the fact that Brian has so many more Planeswalkers in his deck that Bill does. Once Brian commits a threat, each of his threats continues to gain him advantage without really much mana investment.
Yeah, and those Mishra's Factories, I think, are really powerful here. Bill, you saw had a Supreme Verdict, but it left a factory on the board.
I mean, they're how Brian's winning. He's not winning. He doesn't have to resolve creatures. His creatures are hard enough to remove, and by virtue of factories, he actually has more. He has a lot of creatures in his deck.
Okay, so both players are looking at their sideboards. Brian takes a grip full. What's he gonna do here?
So what Brian has a few things. He has. Really, he's still just going to be mostly a grindy deck. He has 2 Vendilion Clicks in his board, which probably come in. Vendilion Click is a really excellent answer to Stoneforge Mystic, which is one of the best ways that Bill gains advantage. So I would expect to see Brian board in the 2 Vendilion Clicks. He may board in. I don't believe he may board in 1 Nile Spellbomb. It's a pretty good free roll against 4 Snapcaster Mages. A very low investment way to kind of counteract Bill's card advantage. Other things that he has, I'm not too thrilled about. He has a Spell Pierce. These games go so long that that card's pretty hard to economize good value on. He has Raven's Crime, but once again, Bill's usually not hoarding cards in his hand. So we may see some Raven's Crime. Certainly there are things he can board out. He can board out Dark Blast, Abrupt Decay, just okay in this matchup, I would say. Engineered Explosives, also a little tricky. There aren't too many. I guess Engineered Explosives would probably be the bigger one. He can't set it to all the numbers that he'd like to set it to.
Yeah, 3. Well, he could get 4, right? He has 3 colors naturally, and Deathrite Shaman can make a 4th color.
And even then, there aren't that many permanents to answer. So it certainly is a card those are cards I think that could tolerate being boarded out here.
Yeah, and the Spell Pierces, Bill's big game plan is turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic. So Spell Pierce doesn't really do anything about that.
The Pierce isn't good. The question is if it's better than some of the things Brian is main decking. But whatever ends up in that slot won't be a particularly great card.
Bill Senneway, on the other hand, he's got a lot of 1s and 2s here. Certainly is going to want another Jace the Mind Sculptor, a 3rd copy out of his sideboard.
Right. So he has an interesting thing in that he's at a little bit of a structural disadvantage because his cards, he doesn't have as many good late game cards as Brian does. So he's going to have to kind of combat some of Brian's engines. There's a few ways he can do that. He can rest in peace to basically stop the roam recursion engine if he wants to. That's probably not the best way to go about it. it might just be something as simple as boarding in detention spheres to answer opposing planeswalkers.
Yeah. I was going to say that you mentioned that the number of planeswalkers that BBD has is a problem. He's got 3 Liliana with Veil, 4 Jace the Mind Sculptors, and a singleton Garruk Relentless.
So I just, he has duress and detention spheres in the board. Those will certainly come in. Spell Pierce is okay, but once again, I think suffers from the same problem that it does when we're talking about Brian boarding it in, is that there are a lot of lands end up showing up in this matchup, and the card has trouble staying alive.
Alright, and the engineered explosives for Bill are probably a little better against Brian. The big thing is, like, the Deathrite Shaman, again, we saw it going to town. Mana, life gain, life loss.
Right.
Bill Senneway on the draw. Looks like he said keep. No, he's still thinking.
Yeah, so the standings are down. We said this on Twitter, but for those of you not following on Twitter, the questions are we already, I said that most of the top 8 has been decided before this round. Shaheen Sarani, Dan Walton, Paul Lynch, Alex Hatfield, Jarvis Yu, and Daniel Signorini all already in the top 8. Those tables 1 through 3 drew in this round.
So this is one of the at-large seats in the top 8.
Yeah, 2 and possibly a 3rd table battling for those remaining spots.
BVD certainly in with a win. Bill Senneway, he's got the extra draw, so unsure if he can make it, but he's going to fight it out.
Yeah, so the crime to go with the Loam Crime engine was boarded in by Brian. You start with a turn 1 Raven's Crime, and that'll nab engineered explosives from Bill Senneway.
All right, if Bill's got the Stoneforge Mystic here, he's got a game plan.
It looks like once again Bill's hand is a little. He does have the. Never mind. He does have the Stoneforge. Yep. There's that last card hiding out there on the left.
And he's got the Jace.
Right.
So
those two pair, having been best friends in a few formats.
Band together.
Yeah, band together in a few formats.
Resolves. What are you going to get, Bill? Most likely Batterskull. Yeah, there it is. So now Brian, Tropical Island, Abrupt Decay immediately.
Yep.
So Batterskull's going to have to wait a while before he can come to play. But meanwhile, Jace might come to town.
Yep, a nice card, just card advantage engine there by Bill, and another Stoneforge Mystic. So these are must-answer cards.
Bill's been ripping here.
Yeah, that Stoneforge not in his opening hand, but the second one at least. So Brian, the scary thing for Brian is that if Brian say Liliana Edicts here, Bill will get to resolve with Jace, which is pretty bad news.
And that's what he's going for.
I think that's what's going to happen. And I don't know if Brian really has much he can do about it.
Oh, he feels like he has to get rid of the Stoneforge Mystic because it's going to cheat in Batterskull.
Yeah, if there's an active Mystic and Batterskull going on, that's one of the things in Bill Senneway's deck that Brian really has trouble dealing with.
But do you also have trouble with Mr. the Mind Sculptor?
Most certainly, I would say. So Bill's able to do this, for 3 turns has played basically must-answer cards.
Yeah. And I think the life total should be 18 for Bill Senneway here.
Yeah, he's cracked
2 fetch
lands.
lands.
2 fetch lands. So then the question is, does Brian have a Force of Will right now?
It seems like he would have Force of Willed one of the Stoneforges.
Very likely to go though. Jace resolves for
There we go.
Alright.
Jace versus Liliana. I don't think we've had that dual deck yet, but here we are.
It's not a particularly fair fight. Not in this form. I'm not sure it's a fair fight in really any form.
Well, what if you have Liliana of the Realms versus Jace Architect of Thoughts?
No, closer. One draws spells and the other draws swamps.
Okay.
It is close, sure.
But then the swamps make 4, wait, is it 4 or 5 mana?
4, once you get the emblem.
I've never had that emblem.
So yeah, and here's the thing, you know, Brian pluses the Liliana, but with Bill drawing double the number of cards each turn, that almost plays into Bill's plan more than it plays into Brian's.
They both lose a card here, but Bill, brainstorming with Jace, is getting an extra card on his turn.
Yeah, the question is if Brian can Jace back right now.
Brian needs to find a threat to take on Jace.
Yeah, doesn't have too many threats that he can make here. I think his probably ideal play is just a Legend Rule to Jace.
He would need Mishra's. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and you're right, Factory can answer it, but the problem I think is the speed with which it would do it. You know, Bill would get at least 2 more Brainstorms off before that happened.
And could Fate Seal to start throwing off the math.
Yeah, he'll Brainstorm into a Swords of Factory, you know, and basically make the Jace unanswerable.
But now Brian's got the Planeswalker advantage. Bill's going to duress to take a look. What do you got left?
Death Shaman and Vendilion Click, so
2 creatures.
Duress.
Swing and a miss for that duress.
Now, Bill opted to do that play over making a Batterskull. I believe he has a 5th land.
He's got Batterskull, Swords to Plowshares. Yeah, he's got the Academy Runes.
Right, so in his graveyard, he just has currently the Engineered Explosives.
He can...
So both players actually with Vendilion Clicks right now.
So he could get back the explosives and explosives for 3 to take out the Liliana.
Yeah. Bill is hoping that exactly this will happen, which is that Brian will V-click first, because now Bill can Swords the V-click and make a V-click of his own to threaten Liliana. One of the problems is, like, until the V-click's out of Brian's hand and met the Swords, Bill can't really V-click.
Well, he could also put back the Engineered Explosives and blow it for 3 and get them both
here. Get
here.
them both here. Right.
Ooh, a Judge Foil.
Yep, the Judge Foil V-click.
Signed by someone. I wonder if it's signed by the artist or by Bill Senneway's favorite judge. It's not me.
You didn't sign the V-click?
No, I've never signed a V-click. So is that the line of play you think Bill's going to pursue here, is get back the Engineered Explosives?
Well, certainly he has a good amount of inevitability if that's what he wants to do. He has a healthy life total to work with, so being greedy is pretty well rewarded right now. Deathrite Shaman for Brian Braun-Duin. Remember, one of those can get swords. You know, I think that I do like, yeah, he can do that. He can swords the Deathrite. Academy runs the Engineered Explosives, play explosives on 3, crack it past the turn.
Yeah, he has 5 mana, so he can play it for 3 and blow it.
Yeah, he can. So if he's willing to spend his turn here and all his mana, he can just wipe the entire board right now.
And he'll still have a Batterskull in hand.
It seems pretty strong. I do like the play.
He's thinking about it. So he
He's
goes for the
V-click.
swords. Okay.
So to me, that says no. Yeah, I mean, he's clearly not going for that line. Yeah, he does not want to draw the Engineered Explosives. It might be that he's just not particularly worried about Liliana right now. None of her abilities are particularly relevant.
But that also leaves the Deathrite around to get active.
Yeah, and I think, you know, so the question is how much value is Bill assigning the Deathrite Shaman? You know, it's fairly new in this matchup and fairly new in the metagame, so not every player, they're still
figuring out how to play
There's a lot of
around
different opinions going, like, how much of a must-answer card is Deathrite Shaman?
And he might not be afraid of it because it can't take his artifacts. So his explosives is safe. If he wants to go that route, he can still do it later.
He really can deal with Deathrite Shaman at will thanks to Engineered Explosives.
Yeah.
And I was going to say before, that top deck,
wow,
this board is amazing. I was going to say his line is amazing as long as Brian does not draw a Jace the Mind Sculptor, and Brian did just that.
Bounce your Germ, +1 Liliana. Brian discards an extra Liliana.
Deathrite. And now Bill has a big problem, which is it's a Jace, and Bill in his hand has no way to answer it.
So this time it's Brian with the big top deck of Jace the Mind Sculptor. threatening to put this match away and punch Brian Braun-Duin's ticket to the top 8 of this Legacy Open in Baltimore.
And I think one of the more interesting things about how standings math has worked with the new top 8 rules, because Brian wasn't able to draw in and had to win in, he will most likely be the top, if not one of the top, if not the top seed for the top in the top 8.
Okay, because he is on what, 21 right now?
Right. So when you're the lowest 21, all the 21s above are draw the way to 22, but the guy who has to play gets all the way to 24.
You go to 24.
So a Swords drawn for Bill is not going to give him. It'll give him help with the Deathrite Shaman, but still nothing in sight that's going to answer Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Right, he can't keep up here. He doesn't have enough mana. He can bounce the Batter Skull. He can return his Batter Skull and replay it. But Jace, still with 2 loyalty counters, has plenty of time. And Liliana's ticking up too. Liliana now is a threat. It can buy Jace time by using the Edict ability.
Yeah, he's going to just brainstorm here. He gets Snapcaster, Tropical Land, and the proxy card you're seeing there is one of Garruk Relentless in Brian's deck. So he's really starting to assemble, Team Planeswalkers. Oof. And there's number 3. This is a one of Garruk, so he has 8 Planeswalkers in his main deck.
And it's going to make a 2/2 wolf.
Yep, just a wolf maker.
So Jace versus Liliana, not a fair fight.
Well,
what about Jace and Liliana and Garruk versus nobody?
Well, I do like how he's kept Jace in the middle of Garruk versus Liliana. The two of them currently, in a duel with each other, so
Jace,
keeping the two separate.
The Peacekeeper. Is that the next version?
Jace has the ability creatures can't attack. And yeah.
So now returning the explosives, I believe.
Yep.
And casting it for what amount? 3.
Yeah, Bill Senneway's deck without the ability to cast it on 4. So what that means is he can't put it on 4 to get rid of Garruk and Jace. So instead he's opting to use a turn to get rid of Liliana. So there's 2 other very large problems that he has right now. Bill's gonna go ahead and let Brian have Liliana for a little bit. Brian's really not incentivized to plus it. He knows if he gets the Liliana plussed, he's making himself discard a card and he's gonna lose the Liliana. So Liliana will probably just hang out on 4 at this point.
So let's see here. Liliana with 4 loyalty, Jace with 2, Garruk with 3. Brian Braun-Duin's got a lot of friends here, a lot of loyal friends.
And Wasteland, he's going to waste off Tundra as opposed to Academy runs. And the last card in hand is Snapcaster Mage, and he'll just pass the turn. Engineer Explosives on Incept does get rid of the Liliana.
Okay, 1 Planeswalker down. How do you deal with the other 2 and a growing army of 2/2 wolf tokens? Okay, Jace. That'll deal with the second one.
Alright.
So in quick order, 2 Planeswalkers have been dealt with.
And a huge draw of Jace there for Bill Senneway. Actually, now that he's gotten rid of Liliana and Jace, he's gotten rid of the 2 Planeswalkers that can readily deal with a Germ token.
Okay, but Wasteland took out his 5th land, so now he still has to draw a 5th land to replay Batterskull.
Interestingly enough, Brian Braun-Duin just Ambush Vipers the Snapcaster on end step.
Another Wasteland.
So now Bill out of white sources. And Swing by 6 drops Bill Senneway down to 9. Third Wolf from Garruk will now threatens 8 damage in the following turn. Not lethal, but pretty close. Especially that means if Bill draws a fetch land to try to get white, he won't be able to use it because he'll be at 1 if he has to take this entire attack.
Those Wastelands have been devastating here. Oh, he naturally draws a Plains.
That's a start. His out
to what?
here.
What is his out?
Well, he does.
Supreme Verdict.
Supreme Verdict needs 2 white sources.
So that is not an out.
I'm not sure he has one. Would be my answer.
I think he is outless.
The swing
Out
for 8
of
puts
outs.
Senneway to 1.
I would be happy to be surprised here. I think Bill's doing some thinking in his head. What are my outs?
Yeah.
Well, Okay, he could, if he EE, so puts the explosives back. No, okay, he's gonna put Batterskull back. I was thinking getting the explosives on 0 for the tokens, but Snapcaster's still there, so...
Right,
I think his out was put the... No, because he has to draw also a Swords to Plowshares for the Snapcaster.
right, so yeah, when you put a card on top, it doesn't actually give you an extra draw. I don't know that there is one.
No.
Pass back, and he's gonna, make Brian walk through the motions, but that should be enough.
There's the handshake.
Congratulations on Braun-Duin on making it into the top 8 with that victory. With bug control, that should give him what I believe is probably the number 2 seed in the top 8. There's the other match. They're actually the worst breakers of the 2 matches playing for slots in top 8.
Okay.
So the other one playing out will be the 1 seed. Brian, though, will have the 2 seed, which gives him the play.